Rocky Mountain of Denver. I can almost see Houston from here.
Hey guys, Mass Bandit here with the next episode of Let's Build Houston Again. And as if you can tell from the map, we are at Memorial Parkway. I'm putting in Memorial Parkway. And in this episode today, we will do both Memorial Parkway, Memorial Drive, and Allen Parkway, which are the two major arteries that service the Houston immediately west of downtown. It's called, there's Uptown, and there's the Montrose, and neighborhoods like that, along with the Memorial neighborhood, and River Oaks, and there's a bunch of neighborhoods that this area services, or that these two arteries service. Memorial Drive is the much more highway-ish road. There's no lights, and there's on-ramps and off-ramps. And up until recently, Allen Parkway was the same way, but it was a lot more winding and actually a lot more dangerous. There were always lots of accidents on Allen Parkway. But what they've done in the last year or two is they have completely revamped Allen Parkway, which means that the map I have is going to be inaccurate. So I'm still debating whether to just keep the map the way it is or to change it up and get a more accurate representation. This is when I realized with the 81 tiles unlocked just how much I can do. I can include all of Memorial Park in this build, which is massive. It's absolutely huge. So if I decide to head farther west, then that's what that'll be an area where we can add the park. It's a huge park. It's more like nature park than like built up park, if that makes any sense. Also, what I spent a lot of time doing in this episode is using the terrain tools to get much, much closer to the actual limits of Buffalo Bayou. Now, this is where the scale of the map and the scale of real life and the scale of the game don't all mesh too well. There's actually a lot of room in between Memorial and Allen Parkway. There's a whole park system down there, the Buffalo Bayou nature trails, and you can see when I pull up the map past the bayou that all that green area, that's like walking trails, and there's a dog park in there, and there's all kinds of great stuff. And they've also, in the last few years, spent a lot of money to revamp that and make it way more pedestrian friendly and all that stuff. So this map isn't the most accurate, both in its layouts and in the scale of parks and stuff. Like you can see all the little trails that are in the Buffalo Bayou Park area, and it's not going to happen. Eleanor Tinsley Park right there on the map, that's where a lot of outdoor concert venues are. And one of the things they did with Allen Parkway when they fixed it up is they actually they added more parking and slowed the speeds down and added more lights and made it an actual parkway. And so once I got those two streets in, I went ahead and I threw in another artery, another major street, which is Washington Avenue. And that one heads all the way into downtown as well. I used to drive Washington every single day on my way to and from work when I lived in this area. I've been to Max's Wine Dive there. So I decided I would go ahead and do the part that I spent out of the 8 years I've lived here in Houston, or this is my 8th year. Out of the 7 full years I've lived here, 4 were spent in this more or less neighborhood, and then 3 are way out in the burbs where I'm at currently. So I figured I'd do the part I am most familiar with here. So that's what's going on here. We're going to lay in all these streets. This Waugh Drive here turns into Heights Boulevard, and Heights Boulevard is a really swanky street, and it's got a lot of old Victorian homes. And I said in my previous series that it was one of the first suburbs of Houston that was later annexed by the city. So I'm trying to get rid of the bridges there. We don't want any bridges. I don't want any of those over bridges. One of the things I had trouble with here is it's a boulevard that then just turns into a 4-lane road. And I tried to show that merging at the intersection there, and I just decided to fudge it because it just wasn't happening. And then on this area here is a major overpass. Waugh actually becomes elevated at this point, and it goes over Memorial, and then it goes over the bayou, and then it goes over Allen Parkway before it returns to ground level again. So I wanted to make sure that I at least got the elevated part done. I didn't add any of the connections yet because that's going to be kind of a hassle. There we're using that awesome Move It mod again. There are some weird terrain shifts on this map, and I mean it makes sense because in real life the bayou is really below street level. It's a good, like it's way down there because it floods so easily. Here in Houston we suffer from flooding a lot. You probably, well, I assume it made national news. The last 2 springs we've had awful flooding. This year we had it twice. We had it once around Tax Day, and then once around Memorial Day. We had some terrible floods. And so Buffalo Bayou is a major flood area. Anytime it rains heavily, Buffalo Bayou floods. And that means that Memorial Drive floods, and that means that Allen Parkway floods. And it's kind of a pain. But yes, when it's not raining, I mean, the bayou is really narrow, really small, and so it's way down there. But anyway, so that's why we have some weird terrain issues. This is another issue I ran into, was using the Anarchy mod, or the sharp junctions, trying to get this split. This is Shepherd Drive and Durham. Shepherd and Durham are 2 parallel roads that are one ways in opposite directions, and Durham meets Shepherd at this point before Shepherd becomes an elevated road to go over, just like Waugh did. And getting these 2 to look good was a struggle, and again, I just had to end up budging it. So that's what's going on there. And I'm not sure. No, I didn't put the overpass for Shepherd in. That'll probably be one of the last things we do, or something we do in the next episode. Now, one of the issues I ran into the first time that I did this series was that I didn't have perfectly 90-degree angles, which meant when I went into zone, things got all kinds of weird. So it took me a couple tries here to make sure that I was getting the 90 degrees that I needed. And yeah, so that's what's going on there. And we're going to be doing a lot of grid work today. That's a lot of grid work. So while this grid work's going on, I'm going to turn on some tunes and show you some images of this area so you can see what it's going to look like. I can show you the apartment complex we used to live in, maybe, and I'll show you some of the commercials, just some of the area if Google returns anything. So hopefully that's coming up now if I got it done, and hopefully there's some low grade tunes. So we're just going to let it play, and if anything interesting happens as we're going through this, I'll let you know. Otherwise, enjoy the images and enjoy the time lapse, and I'll come back when this part's more or less done, and I'll let you in on any interesting things. This Fegan Street here that I'm putting in right now, that was where I would always turn, because the apartment complex we used to live in was right off of Fegan Street. And these are really narrow roads, and there are drainage ditches on either side and no curbs, so it's terrifying. And this road right here that we're putting in, Jackson Hill, I think that's what that's called, it is one of the only roads that actually has a direct line has a direct entrance to Memorial Drive. It's a stop sign, and it's a terrifying stop sign, because the speed limit there is like 45 or 50, but most people do 60 at least, and you're sitting there waiting at the stop sign trying to get across what is essentially a highway. It's nerve-wracking, but yeah. And also over here there is a pedestrian overpass that my wife and I would cross regularly to to go hiking down in the bayou. There's a nice 5K loop down there. There's also a frisbee golf in Buffalo Bayou Park. There's a skate park. There's all kinds of cool stuff down there. So maybe we'll have to find ways to squeeze all that in later on. Yeah. So the art car museum, that is something that is quintessentially Houston. Apparently there's an art car parade where people trick out cars, like old junky looking cars, and they theme them and decorate them, and they have a parade. And apparently there's an art car museum right here on Heights Boulevard. It's kind of interesting. So yeah, I thought you might enjoy that. The one of the last things we're going to do in this episode is actually work on the I-10 overpass, and it doesn't get finished in this episode because it was more pain in my butt than it was worth. One of the issues we're going to run into are the merging lanes, making sure that we have room, even with road anarchy and all that, making sure we have enough room for the merging lanes on and off of I-10 onto the frontage roads. That's what the road is that I was putting in just before, the frontage road. There are 3-lane roads on either side of the interstates all around Houston, and they are our frontage road system. And it's all throughout Texas, and it's actually, like, it took me a while to get used to it. I hated it when I first moved here. But once I got used to it, it's actually a pretty cool system. It really helps the flow, and it's a lot less dangerous than a whole bunch of cloverleaf interchanges. So, yeah, the issue I'm having in-game is making sure that I save room for the ramps from highway to feeder. So that's kind of an issue that I'm running into, and it's not something that ends up getting resolved in this episode. So, wah for that. And so then what I got going on here is, in order to use the smooth angle or whatever, straight angle or whatever it is, you have to turn the anarchy off. And I can't do that because I've nested those roads so close together. That's when I decided to say, screw it, I'll do it later. So we put in a couple more roads here. And that's just about going to close out the episode. Once I think I finish these streets, yeah, I think once these streets are done, is about the time where we'll get into some overviews and you'll see what we've completed. And there might be a couple more time lapses like this while I get reset up before we start the simulation. And then I'd like to do a part time lapse, part real time style, kind of like Fresh Popcorns. He does some time lapse, but he also then builds real time and shows off what he built in the time lapse, and that's kind of something I think I'd like to do. So be ready for that in the next couple episodes, but it will be time lapse up until I get this all completed as I do. Here's another. Here I am trying to fiddle again with that. The merge of Washington from a boulevard down to just a regular old road. Still didn't work. Still kept it dull. So right here on this Waugh Drive, actually Waugh Drive is that narrow little road that Heights then turns into. It's really confusing. The first time I came down here I got lost. I was trying to get onto Waugh, but there are no signs for Waugh. You have to know that Heights turns into Waugh, and if you don't know that, then you're up a creek. But anyway, in that little like triangle-y thing there on Washington and Waugh, there's an awesome little place. It's called Sammy's. And it's Sammy's Wild Game Grill. And Sammy's Wild Game Grill has awesome burgers. And you can get Slider Trio, and one of my favorites are kangaroo burgers. They taste really weird. They taste really different than your traditional hooved animal. I mean, buffalo, elk, antelope, they all pretty much taste the same. But then you throw a kangaroo burger in there, and that's totally different. So if you're into wild game and you're ever in Houston, Washington Avenue and Heights, Waugh, Sammy's Wild Game Grill. It's awesome. So I guess with that, we're pretty much done with this episode. You're going to see in a second here a little overview of the area we worked on. There it is. Ta-da. All right, guys. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Next one's coming soon. Click like, click subscribe, share, tell your friends, tell your pets, tell whatever. See you next time. Have a great day. Bye-bye.